All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Brian Laufer, and I'm the Vice President here at QuoteWerks. If you have any questions as we go along here, please feel free to ask them in the GoToWebinar toolbar questions box as we go along. If there are any questions that we do not answer throughout the demo, we'll do our best to answer them towards the end. And if you do think of a question after the webinar or we do not fully answer your question, please make sure to send us an email or give us a call. I'm sure Matt's going to be providing his contact details here, so you can definitely reach out to him, or you can send an email to community@quoteworks.com. I'll be happy to answer that for you as well. So QuoteWerks has over 55 integrations. This integration that we're going to be talking today is not one of them, however. We have a number of third-party developers that have created integrations and links to QuoteWerks using our API. And you can see these third-party add-ons on our website. I've got the little screenshot here showing you exactly how to get to it. These integrations include everything from accounting to workflow, CRM, and more. The ChatGPT integration that we were talking about today was developed as a collaboration between Prestige Quoting and Connected Software. So joining us today is going to be Matt Rose from Prestige Quoting. Just coincidentally here, he has been the QuoteWerks MVP for like the last decade now, so he has a wealth of QuoteWerks knowledge. With that short introduction, I'll go ahead and pass the presentation over to Matt. So Matt, you have the ball.
Thank you, Brian. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen and not looking at myself. It's really quite disturbing. Yeah, thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here with you on the webinar, and thank you everyone for joining. Now, I won't bore you all here this afternoon with who I am, what I do, but if you do have any questions about me or sort of what I get up to, feel free to pop them in the chat box or visit my website, details at the end. What we're going to be looking at today is the first of its kind in any quoting software. In about a minute or so, I'll show you an example of what I think is a bad quote, explaining why I think it falls short, and then we'll go through by swiftly enhancing it and then comparing those two versions side by side. Now, over the years, I've provided numerous valuable functionality to QuoteWerks users before they became native to the platform, from things like payment integrations to inclusion of video on Quote Valet and the concept of time-sensitive quote expiration. So let's just say, with a bit of a wink at Brian, that the QuoteWerks team may have taken some inspiration from some of these ideas. However, what I'm going to show today, in my mind, surpasses any other concept that I've come up with during my 18-year journey with QuoteWerks. And just to let you know, that introduction was brought to you by ChatGPT. So without any further ado, here's a sample of what I would define as a bad quote. And we'll hop into QuoteWerks in a minute or two, and then we'll transform this using the power of our QuoteWerks ChatGPT integration. So here's a quote that I've created in QuoteWerks. It features a combination of products, services, and if we just sort of take a step back for the moment, regardless of the industry that we operate in, we often find ourselves using jargon, acronyms that can be almost a foreign language to our clients and prospects. And whilst we navigate that terminology sort of without thinking, communicating that in plain English can be a challenge. If you just think, how many times have you sent a quote to a client only to sort of seemingly be bombarded with questions seeking clarification? And a very sort of brief personal story. Recently, I had solar panels and battery storage installed at my home, and I received numerous bad quotes. Those quotes would either make assumptions about my understanding of technical terms. You know, why would I know the difference between a microinverter and a string inverter? So unfortunately, those companies really just failed to consider that not everyone possesses that level of knowledge. Now, if you're an IT provider, it's highly likely that you sort of understand everything that's on this quote. If you're not, some of this might be that foreign language I mentioned. So if we just sort of take a look at that first line, this Cat5 to Cat6 cabling upgrade. Now, I'm the sort of geek that knows what that is, but can we expect the same level of familiarity from, let's say, the CFO at one of your clients? This quote has landed on their desk for approval, but you've perhaps interacted with other individuals within the organization, not the CFO. All they have in front of them is this text, Cat5 to Cat6 cabling upgrade, and they're wondering, what's it for? Why do I need it? They are then probably turning to their colleagues for that additional information, excluding you from the conversation. You're then relying on those colleagues to accurately relay the details, which let's just say could be hit and miss. It's a cumbersome process, it wastes time, and bluntly, it doesn't make it easy for your clients to say yes. Finally, before we actually hop into QuoteWerks, reflecting back on my experience with the solar panel experience, is their confusing terminology on their bad quote made it challenging for me to make a decision. However, those providers probably didn't realize that it was a bad quote because it made perfect sense to them. That's where our integration comes in, which we'll be looking at in about 10 seconds. We really want to simplify the process and make it effortless as we can for our clients to say yes. So let's take this quote and let's make it better. So here I am in QuoteWerks, from which this PDF has been created. And you'll see I've got things like some heading lines, I've got various products and services, I've got a comment line, I've got some introductory text. So let's go from that to something that's more informative and perhaps a good quote. So I'm going to run up to my tools menu and I'm going to load my ChatGPT chat window. And the first thing I'm going to ask it to do is I'm going to say something like, explain the benefits of the content of the description. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen, of the description of my Cat5 to Cat6 cabling upgrade. You'll notice that I've got a handful of drop downs just here, and I'll go through sort of what each of those do. So I'm now going to say, chat. This is now pushing that description, and in a moment or two, it will then pull down a response, something like that. Now I can modify this text, I can do whatever I want with it. And what I'm going to ask the software to do is to write that into this, what I call a further detail field. And there it goes. Let's now do the sort of same thing, but this time for line 4. So this is where I'm supplying and installing a cloud managed firewall. I know what that is. Does that CFO at your prospect or client, do they understand what that is? Because on my bad quote, that's the only information I've given them. What I'm going to do just here, because it's quite fun, I think, is I'm going to ask it to explain it like I'm 5. Now, you probably wouldn't do this in the real world, but I think it's quite fun. So this is just talking bluntly about, it will keep your computer safe, we'll install it for you. Great. Okay, so this CFO, I'm explaining it to him, or her, of course, sorry. And again, I'm going to push that to the line just below. Let's do that now for the version of Microsoft 365, explain the benefits in perhaps around 50 words. So again, chat, it's pushing and it's pulling that information. So I might be looking at that and I might say, actually, perhaps I do want a bit more information. So I'm not going to use that hint just there, and I'm going to go round once more. Yeah, that's a bit more comprehensive. So I'm going to write that. And then finally, I've got some Lenovo computers at the bottom, which I've pulled in via Utilize, and that has pulled in through some product information. Again, I'm just thinking that all of that is this foreign language concept. So I'm now going to say, go and grab all of that text. And again, just for fun, let's do the explain it like I'm 5. So yeah, it makes it really fast and we can do lots of things at once. And, it's got a special this, that, and the other. So again, I'm happy with that. And I'm now going to have the software override what has already been, what was already on the document. Now, to make this really different, I now want to produce a cover letter. And from my experience, this is something that not many people that use QuoteWerks do, primarily because of the time it takes. So a cover letter is going to allow us perhaps to provide context, highlight the key points of the quotation. So what I'm going to ask it to do is I'm going to say, write a proposal cover letter using no more information than that. So I'm just saying, basically, this is what we're doing. Chat that. Now, because it's going to write almost a page's worth of text, does take a little longer than just producing a sentence or two, but certainly far quicker than having to handcraft it, and certainly far better than not adding a cover letter at all. So that's now pulled through sort of 2/3 a page of text. And I'm now going to tell QuoteWerks, I want you to put that in the introduction notes over the top of what we've already got. So if I now go to my document notes, I might know that things like my layout already handles the sort of salutation. I'm just going to go in and override sort of that macro just there. And this is the point where I'd probably recommend that you do go through and read it, maybe go and make a couple of modifications as you see fit, but it really gives a fantastic structure. So Brian, we've just been through and we've GPT-ified that bad quote. Before I go and sort of preview that good quote in my mind, have any sort of pertinent questions come in that could do with answering at this point?
So as far as any questions, so far we do not have any questions that would be relevant yet. So please feel free to continue on. I apologize.
Okay.
Oh,
so
actually,
I'm going to go ahead.
Actually, let me stop you there. So a bunch of them just flew in. Raf has a question. Does this work in other languages besides just English?
Wow. I've in my draft testing, I haven't done that. What it certainly can do, and you might have spotted something that I've got, for example, translate to German. So let's just say I've written something in English and I want it to translate to German. Let's try that with the introduction notes. So I've pulled all of those introduction notes in. Let's chat that, see what happens. Now there's a fair amount of text for it to be going through, and anyone that's played around with ChatGPT on the web, okay, so it's had some fun just there. To be honest, that's not something I've tested in detail. I don't see why it wouldn't. your mileage might vary, I think, would be the thing to say on that point. I have only tested it using English.
Okay, very good. And Christy, I'll answer your question. Yes, we are recording this, and anybody that has registered for this webinar will be sent a link to it. Give us 24 to 48 hours, and we'll get that out to you. Let's see. Okay, Rob has a question here. Will connected workflow come with QuoteWerks in the future, or will this be a side purchase to integrate with QuoteWerks?
So we are treating this as a separate separate tool at the moment. Who knows what the future will hold? Should take up be good on this, and I might talk about this a little bit once we've made sure that I'm sort of showing everything. Is there are 101 things I would absolutely love this to do, but sort of like you, Brian, at QuoteWerks, you have to sort of make sure that there is demand for it. So this is a version 1.0. I hope, and particularly when we go and preview this good quote compared to the bad, you'll see how valuable it is. But yeah, who knows what the future will hold.
Okay, very good. All right. Some of these are going to be a little bit more advanced. I don't know where this is going to go. So Tony has a question. Is there a way to train the model to a client's particular use?
No. And that is a current limitation of the ChatGPT API. So it won't learn about your organization, that sort of thing. That is a limitation currently of the ChatGPT API. So because it can't do it, it is not something we're able to offer.
Okay. Let's see. All right. We have more of a QuoteWerks question, but since you're the QuoteWerks MVP, I'm sure you have the ability to answer this. We don't have a field that says customer facing. Can you answer this?
Okay. So all QuoteWerks users can modify this look and feel. So up in View Customize Columns, I've sort of borrowed this field Custom Memo 1 because it can store pages worth of information. Not that, at least in my experience, people hold pages worth. So if you go in there, so you can see I've got a raft of fields that I'm showing here. I find a field that I like, I then rename it, put it where I want, and then as we'll see in a moment or two, I've then told that to go on the customer facing document just here, which we'll see in a moment or two.
Okay, great. All right, and Joe, I think that question that you had, that falls in line with that. I think Matt's going to continue on in the demo here, and if it doesn't, let me know. All right, cool. Let's see, and then a really cool question, which I think is going to be like for the integration version 4. DC has a question. Is there a way to incorporate diagrams, pictures, or images? A picture is worth more than all the words.
Absolutely, a picture is. Words are often better than no words, but no, it is text-based at the moment, dependent upon where ChatGPT or all these AI tools that are cropping up. What we have here with version 1.0 is infinitely better than what we have at the moment. Diagrams, images, mock-ups of faces, all that stuff. Yeah, but let's see where we are in a few years' time.
All right, very good. And Matt, you can go ahead and continue with your demo here.
Right. So if we just remind ourselves of what I think is a bad quote. So there it is. It's sort of, I've got the nuts and the bolts. I'm then breaking that out sort of on a second page. What we did is we added some of this further detail to each of the lines, and then we created that. So if I now go deliver, and I'll save this, and I'll leave that random name, and view that file, what we've now got is our cover letter. So again, the cover letter is highlighting those key points of the quote, emphasizing the value proposition, explaining notable aspects, guiding the customer's attention to the most important details, that sort of thing. And hopefully really enabling the customer to make those informed decisions by understanding the value they will receive. So we've got something like that just there. And then if we come down to the line level, now I didn't go in and modify any of this text. I didn't sort of break out. You can sort of see that we've got 5 sort of sections there. If I take another 5 seconds, I maybe would have broken those out, so it's a little easier to read. But the theory is I'm now giving the client much more information that, remember that CFO, this quote has landed on their desk for approval. They're then going back and forth internally. They've got to come back to you with questions. Answer the client's question before they even realize they've got one. That is how we make it easy to say yes. We've then got that sort of explain it like I'm 5 option. I'd probably, when I should have previewed this and then snuck in a little page break, upgrade from Microsoft E3 to E5. Why, says the CFO. There is the reasoning. And when we did that, all the information ChatGPT had was that, and we've now pulled in all of this information. Similarly for, £11,000-12,000 or dollars worth of new workstation here, it's got 6 cores, so it'll be really fast. Isn't that wonderful? Again, explain it like I'm 5. Similarly, we could do that with this comment line just here. I neglected to do that, but again, I could ask ChatGPT really to sort of just flesh that out, make it more sort of customer focused. So I hope you agree, going from something like, if I try and get them sort of side by side-ish, going from that being a bad quote to something like that, which if I hadn't waffled through, I sort of tested myself before, I can go from that before version to this after version in about 60 seconds. And I think that is incredible. I might be wrong, but I think that's incredibly powerful. And a thought-provoking challenge for you. At some point, take a moment to review a few of the quotes you or your team have recently prepared, and then imagine yourself in the position of the recipient, someone who is not familiar, perhaps with any intricacies of your industry's language and terminology. Put your feet in the shoes of that CFO, and would you categorize your quotes as bad quotes or good quotes? And I think in terms of using the functionality day to day, absolutely, we can perhaps go into the configuration of it and some of the options that we've got. But in terms of functionality, going from that bad quote to that good quote in 60 seconds in this case, if you hadn't had to sort of put up with all my waffle. So in terms of configuration, we pop in some credentials. So OpenAI, the sort of developers, people behind ChatGPT, you pop in some credentials just there. In terms of connecting it to your QuoteWerks database, and we work with any edition of QuoteWerks, if it's Access, if it's SQL, all that's fine. When using it, we can determine which fields I might want to be pushing and pulling. So instead of having a a massive long list of the dozens and dozens of fields that QuoteWerks has. I can really limit that down to the ones I care about. A few sort of user configuration things. But one thing to highlight is when I was using it, I was changing some drop downs, and that really helps get the style of response. So for example, when I say, explain it like I'm 5, can you please rewrite the following as if it were for someone 5 years old? So I'm not having to do that as part of the request. It just sort of knows it. Write a proposal cover letter. Write a cover letter to a prospect on a full page of A4 using British English on the topic of dum dum dum. Correct the spelling, tidy up the grammar, and also the punctuation for British English or American English. All these sorts of things, you can build your own, you can start from scratch, and that really does help control the style of response you're looking for. And at least in my testing, I haven't yet hit a limit of any sort of hints just there. You're probably going to want half a dozen or so, but that is the configuration. So I would love in a few years' time for there to be many more options, because the software will be really fleshed out. But I really hope from what you've seen today that there is a lot of value here. And again, bad quote, good quote.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, this is really impressive. There's lots of very good comments in here. Carl, who had to leave, said it looks really cool. And Joe says it's amazing. But there are quite a few questions that have come in that I think would be good for you to answer here.
Sure.
Let's see. Lots. Hold on. I apologize here. Let's see. So Dave came in just a little bit late, and he kind of heard you talking about tokens with ChatGPT. Can you talk a little bit more about what tokens mean and like what it'll cost from ChatGPT and that sort of thing?
Sure thing. So we need an account with OpenAI, the people behind ChatGPT, and that is sort of a 5-minute job to set that up. I put $20 in that account, and a token sort of is their kind of currency. So when we're pushing and pulling information, those are tokens. $20 equates to about 750,000 characters, about 2,500, somewhere around that. Probably a few more than that, because I sort of based that on a full page, and that's probably not even half a page. So around 5,000 responses like that. In all my testing that I've done, and as you can imagine, that's quite extensive, I've hit 25 cents on that. So yes, there is a small outlay on having those tokens sort of in the bank, but $20 is about 750,000 characters.
All right, very good. We got a question here. With this screen up, I think this is a good time to answer. It looks like Rob had a question about why it looks like the cover letter outline is cut off, and I think I can maybe answer that, because I think you specified 250 characters possibly in what was getting responded from ChatGPT, and that might be what's happening here. But could you maybe see, why it was getting cut off?
I tell you what I've done is when I went in and modified some of that stuff, because it had like yours sincerely or something at the bottom, and I'll go back to the webinar when it gets recorded and I will ask facepalm. But yeah, there's that will be what I've done. That's the first time I've done that, and of course it's a live demo, so of course it's the first time I've done that. But yeah, when I go and watch it back, I'll have just accidentally sort of done something like that and hit delete instead of just taking the final bit at the bottom. So yeah.
Okay.
Always check your work.
Also, since I brought it up, could you go to the ChatGPT integration and kind of show off how you can make the description longer versus shorter as far as what gets returned?
Sure. So we've got a couple of things just up at the top right here. So verbosity is more around the length. So if I did want to restrict it, I can do that. And I think that number goes up to 4,000 or something like that off the top of my head. But let me just do a bit of copy and paste. So that's what we're providing. What I tend to do actually is just use these drop downs. So if I go back to that write a proposal cover letter, I'll get it to do that, and then we'll probably find something very similar to what we've got there, including the missing text at the bottom, of course. Yep, so all that's there. So if I were to now, for example, if I go and change that, if I go and modify the creativity, which is an interesting sort of term in that how sort of dead on to that do we want to be? So I'll now go and ask it to do that. And of course, because I'm asking for more information, we've now got all of that just there. And you can, I hope, see just there that does sort of finish more as one would expect just there. Whereas if I wanted, something really, really kind of short and snappy, I might just ramp that down. The explain the benefits in that hint bit, if we remember our configuration, is sort of, I want it to be much more concise. So there we're really going, new firewall. It's great because upgrade to 365. There you go, and all that will go to a cover letter. Hope that begins to make sense. It is great fun to sort of play with it, but then sort of relating that to the real world, being able to go from that to something like that, it really does put a smile on your face.
Nice. Chuck had a question because you were kind of going line by line by line. Is there a way to like kind of just say, for these 10 lines, go ahead and do this?
At the moment, no. That falls into one of about the 50 things that I would like it to do. And I'm sure Steve from Hilltops IT, who has developed this, was getting a little bit, well, let's just get version 1.0, Matt. You're asking for all these sorts of things. So absolutely, I can see, and technically, I'm sure it would be possible to create some sort of God mode where it goes through each of the lines automatically. It does my cover letter. Absolutely, I can see that's where it's going. There's a bit of development involved in that, but yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that in the product.
So Steve actually just commented. I'm not sure as to how much of that he's commenting on, but apparently version 2 will have that.
Excellent.
So,
which is due by the end of the week, Steve, is that right? There we go. We'll leave that
go there. All right. Let's see. Piotr has a question. What about the ChatGPT Plus subscription? Does it cover the API?
I do not know.
Okay, very good. Let's see. Joel has a question. Is there or will there be a full integration guide as far as how to set this up and use it?
Yeah. So what I'll probably be doing is producing a little video. I do that once and push it out. Probably coming on to pricing, one of the things I will be offering is like remote screen sharing. I'll happily do this all for you, ensure it goes well. But yeah, there's a short README which tells you exactly where to go with an OpenAI to create your account if you haven't done that. It's fully, self-installable. That is something that some people might want assistance with. entirely optional.
Very good. Let's see. I think you already went over it, but just for Katie here, does the text come pre-installed, or do you have to enter a description and then bring it into the quote?
Okay, so all I did just for ease was I did tell it to sort of go and get the QuoteWerks description. But if I just wanted to say something random or just basically go and get some text, I don't know, when was Queen Elizabeth II born? You know, absolutely anything random, off it will go and it will tell me. And then I can copy it to the clipboard, I can pop it into QuoteWerks. One of the things I might want to do is ask it, I think I have this in a drop down, is ask it to sort of tidy up these notes, you know, nothing relating to QuoteWerks at all. But yeah, you know, customer call, printer not working. I'm sure lots of people have seen time entries sort of looking like that. I'm going to say, right, tidy it up, make it better. Off it will go. And I might use that. I might go off to Autotask. I might go off to ConnectWise Manage, and there we go. So it doesn't have to come from information already in QuoteWerks. I can type it in, I can paste stuff in. So I've used it in a completely non-QuoteWerks context to produce something like that.
Very good. And kudos to you. Scott says he's worked with you a ton in the past and it'll be a great experience. He's sure of it.
Oh, that sounds like Mr. Sanford. If it is, thank you, Scott.
All right. Let's see. And then Raf has a question. You know, the items in the descriptions were all inline and not separated lines. Do you have any? Is there a feature where you can have it so you can break the lines up? So like you had, you know, 1, and then at the end of the sentence there was a 2, and kind of just show how that would work.
Yeah. So at the moment, it doesn't do that because all of the information we are getting is sort of provided via the API in that, you know, it's just a block of text. So yeah, and you know, in my good example, you know, what we've got just there is not particularly pretty. And what I could have done, arguably should have done, is just directly in QuoteWerks, you know, sort of broken this out and ended up, so we've got something like that, or maybe using the sort of bullet points, however we go at it. So ChatGPT has done 99% of the work there for me, but yep. If you are asking it to sort of list things like that, take the 5 seconds to break it out. That will be easier. I neglected to do that, so perhaps my good quote isn't as good as it could have been.
Okay, very good. We do have some more questions here. They're kind of similar to the other ones, so let's go ahead and have you maybe talk a little bit about, you know, what the process is to get started, you know, with this integration. You know, who do they talk to, what the cost is, that sort of thing.
Sure thing. So software license, $200 US per year, including access to updates as they're released. Now, while we're labeling it as being beta, it has been meticulously crafted, thoroughly tested, and you know, what you've seen, I hope you think is incredibly valuable. So we're using this beta designation primarily simply for us to gauge the level of interest in what we've created here, and I anticipate the value that will come over and above what already exists will far exceed that current price of $200 per year. For beta users, you can see you'll be fixed at that value for a period of 3 years. As I say, that remote installation, screen sharing, we'll jump on a call, we'll jump on Teams, go to meeting, whatever. I'll jump on up to an hour with you. It certainly will not take more than an hour. If you want additional stuff, yep, that's available. Bit of information there about the Open AI account and those 750,000 words, and yeah, a full page of text costs less than a cent. So if people are interested in what we've got going on here, please feel free to reach out to me directly, matt@prestigequoting.com. Let me know you're interested. I'll send you a quote via QuoteWerks. Surprise, surprise. If you accept it, we'll make it happen.
Very good. Someone did have a question here. Is that $200 a year also per QuoteWerks user?
Nope, per company.
Awesome.
So if you've got 10 concurrent licenses, $200 a year.
Okay, very good. So, and then we do have some customers that have like remote licenses and stuff like that. How would that work for them?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. I'm sure we'd be able to figure out that sort of scenario with an order.
All right, very good. And Eric had a question. I think maybe we can go over the tokens one last time, because that is a little bit different than some of the things that we've done in the past as far as integrations. Eric had a question. Do you need a separate ChatGPT license for this to work?
So you require an OpenAI account. OpenAI are the people behind ChatGPT. So prices are per 1,000 tokens. 1,000 tokens is about 750 words. So about $1 for 50,000 tokens, and that includes the push, i.e. the request, and also the pull. So as I say, what I did, I just stuck $20 up there, not knowing how long it would last. Would it last me a week? With me testing away and throwing weird and wonderful questions at it. 50 cents is where I'm up to on that. And as I say, a full page of text will cost you less than a cent. So what we've got just there is not even half of a page just there, probably because I cut most of it off. But that would cost you less than half of 1 cent, less than. And if that saves the client having to pick up the phone, if it enables them to just say yes, incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. So I've no idea when I'll need to top that up again, but yeah, $20 will get you 750,000 words. I might have said characters before. Yeah, it's 750,000 words.
Okay, and actually, since you brought that up, Dave had a question. How will you know when you've run out of tokens?
On OpenAI, you can set sort of thresholds and sort of percentages. So when you're down to your last 10%, or if you've spent more than half. So I put $20 up there, and I said, when I hit 10, tell me. And all of that you can very easily configure. I created the account with all, put the $20 up there, set those rules up in no more than 6 or 7 minutes. It's very straightforward. OpenAI will certainly let you know. I suspect it will take you many, many months, if not years, to spend that sort of money.
All right, very good. And then going back to the integration pricing, Steve had a question. Is this pricing in USD?
That is in US dollars, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, and do you have it in pounds as well, or is it only going to be in US dollars?
Whatever the exchange rate is, yeah. I'll sell it in whatever currency you like. So yeah, so $200 US. Go and look at the exchange rate, and within a British penny or two, it'll be along those lines.
All right, very good. All right, let's see. I think that's really all the questions that we've got. We've got some kind of repeated questions and some that are a little bit more detailed that we'll take offline. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with everybody here?
No. Perhaps just think about that little challenge of take a moment maybe to review a few of the quotes you or your team have recently prepared. Put your feet in the shoes of that mythical CFO who doesn't understand your industry's language and terminology. Would you categorize those quotes that you have sent out as a business as a bad quote or a good quote?
Very good. All right, well, I think this is very well received by everybody. I know I'm excited. I'm looking forward to trying it out myself.
When are you buying it? Absolutely.
We'll see. All right, so thank you again. And if people do have questions, they should reach out to you. Is that correct?
Yep. If you, I'm sure our details will go out in the future. Yep. But yeah, Matt at prestigequoting.com is the best way.
All right, great. And if for some reason someone forgets that, you can contact us directly, community@quoteworks.com, and we'll be able to get that for you as well. All right, thank you very much, Matt. We're looking forward to trying this out.
Great stuff. Thanks again, Brian. Thanks everyone for taking the time today.
Thank you.